Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix. I'm Amy McKlindon, and I'm your worship associate this morning. Welcome to our online worship service. This morning, we are very excited to have Reverend Terry Sims, the minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Surprise, lead us in worship. I'll look forward to introducing him to you by video in a moment and want to share a little bit more about Reverend Sims. Originally from Kansas and raised in the United Methodist religious tradition, Reverend Sims discovered Unitarian Universalism in 1994 and pursued a second career in ministry after his career in law. He was ordained in 2007 and enjoys spending time with his friends and family, hiking, playing tennis and racquetball, and playing cello. We are so grateful to have him here with us this morning. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix strives to be a spiritual community for our time, focused on diverse theological perspectives, radical inclusion, and knowing that issues of justice and equity shape everything we do. With a special awareness for those who have been historically marginalized, we welcome all, of every race, class, ethnicity, immigration status, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious background, mental and physical ability, and disability. We welcome you here as your whole self, and we welcome your family into worship as we build a community of kindness and caring, courage, and hope. Our opening words this morning are from Reverend Margaret Kipe. As surely as we belong to the universe, we belong together. We join here to transcend the isolated self, to reconnect, to know ourselves to be at home, here on earth, under the stars, linked with each other. I invite you to grab a chalice or a candle from your home as we recite our covenant and light our chalice together. The words are in the chat. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to share our strength in fellowship. Thus do we covenant. Now let me introduce our worship team. Reverend Terry Sims, minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Surprise, and our guest preacher this morning. Our Director of Children's Ministries, Katie Resendez. Our Music Director, Benji Messer. And you heard earlier on our pianist, Mary Coda. And behind the scenes, we have Stephanie Bridell-Vigil, Justin Walgren, and Carol Benwell as our AV team, and Brad Chapman is our moderator today. For our online worship this morning, we encourage you to find the chat symbol on your screen and engage with the information and links that are being shared by Brad, our moderator. And as always, we invite you to check in on social media with the hashtag UUAnywhere. And now for a few announcements about the life of our community. We have a lot of community programming that's continuing through the summer for kids and adults. All of the program links and passwords are in our weekly e-newsletter. You can sign up for Compass on our website, phoenixuu.org. This week's Compass also has information on how to learn more about your county attorney and your state legislature candidates, as well as a link to sign up for our next supply collection for the Navajo Nation community. And as a reminder, our minister, Reverend Christine Dance, is away for vacation and study leave during the month of July. While she is gone, if you have any pastoral care concerns or other questions, you can reach our business administrator, Stephanie Bridell-Vigil, at administrator@phoenixuu.org. This week's offering goes to Share the Plate, with all financial contributions, unless otherwise designated, going to Arizona Friends of Homeless. Arizona Friends of Homeless provides food, hygiene items, water, socks and underwear, pet food, blankets, backpacks, towels, bikes, resource information, and more to individuals experiencing homelessness. You can learn more about their work on their website and Encompass, which includes a link to a photo slideshow to see their work in action. We also are pleased to have representatives from the organization here with us today who will be joining us for coffee hour as well after service. So please take that as an opportunity to connect with them and learn more about their work. You can donate by text. The information is in our chat box, also through our website, or feel free to send in an old-fashioned check. Thank you so much for your generosity in supporting Arizona Friends of Homeless.
Good morning, everyone. Reverend Sims will be speaking today about the difficulties of our lives during the COVID pandemic, and also about music, how music can inspire us to hold on and not give up. One of my favorite songs about holding on to each other and not giving up is the old labor and civil rights song, "We Shall Not Be Moved." It has a long history both in English and in Spanish as "No nos moverán." So feel free to sing with me. The lyrics will be in the chat. Here we go. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. We shall not be moved. And in Spanish, no nos moverán, no nos moverán como un árbol firme junto al río, no nos moverán. All of us together. All of us together, we shall not be moved. All of us together, we shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. We shall not be moved. And unidos en la lucha, unidos en la lucha, no nos moverán. Unidos en la lucha, no nos moverán como un árbol firme junto al río, no nos moverán. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved.
Good morning. I'm Katie Resendez, and I'm the Director of Children's Ministry here at UUC Phoenix. Nico was searching all over the house, under the couch cushions, in the refrigerator, even in the kitchen sink, which was hard and quite a feat because Nico was only 4 years old. Nico was the youngest member of their family, and since they had to be in isolation during this virus, Nico's family had gotten a little bigger, or at least everyone who lived in the house did, because Grandma and Grandpa had come to live. So it wasn't just Nico and Dad and Nico's brother and sister, but Grandma and Grandpa and one of their aunties. And so it was lots and lots of people in one little house. And so Nico running around, all wild and looking everywhere and clearly frantic and upset, was causing quite the tornado in the house. Nico's older brother was the first one who noticed and said, "Hey, kiddo, what's going on? I can't find it. I can't find it anywhere, and I don't know where it is, and I need to find it." "What are you looking for?" "Just help me find it. I don't know. Maybe it's in the bed. I don't know." And like a 4-year-old, Nico ran off to the next room and the next place they had thought of. Nico's brother went and got Dad. Dad came into the room and kind of looked and saw that Nico was tearing the bed apart. "Stop, what are you doing? You're making a mess of this room." "But I need to find it. It's so important. I can't find it anywhere. I lost it." Grandma came in, said, Nico, well, whatever it is, it can't have gone very far. We haven't left the house in 122 days. 122 days. Maybe it's in the yard? No, it's always with me, and I had it when I came back inside, and I can't find it this morning. Okay, well, it's somewhere in the house, and between me and your grandpa and your tio and your dad and your brother and sister and you, we'll find it. Let's make some time. So they called everyone together and said, okay, we're going to look for what Nico lost. Nico, can you tell us about it? It was small, and it fits in my hand, and it's smooth, and it's soft, and it's very hard, and it's really big. It's everything. And sometimes I'm afraid of it, and I really love it, and it helps me, and I can't find it. I can't find it anywhere. And Nico just began to sob and sob. And Nico's sister thought and thought for a second and said, Nico, is it a rock? Because sometimes big sisters have really good insight into their younger siblings. And Nico said, it can be, sometimes. And Nico's sister said, is it a smooth rock about this big? It can be. Did it come from a river? Did it float down the river and bump until it was smooth? Nico's sister said, I don't know, but I know it traveled far and that it's strong and hard and smooth. And Nico said, yes, let me see. Maybe it's it. Let me see. So Nico's sister went off to her room and looked at the windowsill where she had laid a little bit of forest moss, because they lived in northern Arizona, some bark from a tree, a goat head or two, some rocks, a seashell. The windowsill had all sorts of things lined out, and one of them was a rock about this big that had been worn smooth and felt kind of soft, but was very hard too. She picked it out and brought it to her little sibling and said, Nico, is this it? Nico held it in their hands and said, I think so. I think this is it. This is a place for me to put all my wishes. This is the magic that I couldn't find this morning. We've been in this house so long and I've been so tired. And sometimes we fight and I get angry and we eat all the same food and we don't get to go see our friends. And this morning when I woke up, I couldn't find the magic anywhere. But I think it's here. And I think if you put a wish in it and I put a wish in it, that we'll remember that it's here. And so they took that stone and they passed it around the room, and everyone told the stone the wish, and everyone told each other the wish, because sometimes it's easier for a wish to come true if we tell each other and we let each other know what that is beating in our heart, and if we put it somewhere magical and we remember that that magic is with us when we go outside and when we come back in and when we put it on the windowsill. And even when we think we've lost it and we have to search the whole house and cause a true toddler tornado, that magic is still there. And it's there for us. And it helps us be powerful and strong, because you are so powerful and you are so very, very loved. Have a wonderful week, everyone.
Now is the time when we share the joys and sorrows of our community. Being together, it is good to share, to support one another, and to connect. Please write any joys or sorrows you want our community to know about in the chat, sending it to the panelists. You can send in your joys and your sorrows at the same time, and we'll recognize them in the interwoven ways they are present in our lives. Please put your name at the beginning so I know who it's from. And if you want it to be private only to me and not to be shared with our community, please put the word private at the beginning, and I won't say it out loud, but I will hold it in my heart. While you are typing those, I wanted to share a reminder to please remember that we are connected by our neighborhood connector groups, and our lay pastoral care associates are reaching out to folks who may be struggling during this time. As I mentioned earlier, if you have a pastoral concern, please reach out to our business administrator, Stephanie Bridell-Bitchell, at administrator@phoenixuu.org. Right, so Amy Miskell shares a sorrow that Adrienne Miklas has tested positive for COVID-19. At this time, she is still home. John Jacobs shares a sorrow that John's father is in the hospital after suffering a stroke, and recognizing the interwoven connections between joys and sorrows, there is a joy that their new puppy, Avocado Quarantina, is doing great. Phil Slater shares that a close friend has been hospitalized with COVID on Friday. Sam and Michelle said goodbye to their daughter, Shannon, who had been with them for 2 months. Anne Riley shares a joy that this is my second Sunday with you, and a sorrow that I'm sad I miss my daughter who lives in Texas. Katie Resendez shares a huge happy birthday joy to our UUCP administrator, Stephanie. Happy birthday, Stephanie. Oh, and another joy from Sam and Michelle celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary. Another joy recognizing Stephanie and her birthday. Also just a reminder that she unfortunately is also not feeling very well, so if she doesn't respond to emails as quickly, to just please keep that in mind. We have another joy from Melinda Iyer, that Sarah Iyer has a new dog, a toy poodle named Kayla. Melinda Iyer will be celebrating her birthday on Wednesday. And Amy Miskell shares a joy that Stephen's brother Tim is getting used to the new cochlear implant. He can hear words and it is life-changing. The Palumbo family shares two joys, one that they moved into their new home in Chandler, and two that they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary this week. All right, and lots of folks continue to think of Stephanie and her birthday, and really thoughts for healing as she's not feeling well today. And Keith Brown shares a sorrow and request for prayers from Corey, a young homeless Navajo man who went back into detox earlier this week. All right, so as we hold all of these joys and sorrows that have been shared and all that remains in our hearts, I invite you now to settle in for our time of meditation as we reflect on the community of love we build together. I would like to share a poem of friendship by Nikki Giovanni. We are not lovers because of the love we make, but the love that we have. We are not friends because of the laughs we spend, but the tears we save. I don't want to be near you for the thoughts we share, but the words we never have to speak. I will never miss you because of what we do, but what we are together. I invite you now to join me in a moment of silence. Amen and blessed be. As we contemplate the topic of this week's service, holding it together, I'm going to be a little contrarian and a lot UU and challenge the notion of needing to hold it together in the first place. I hope you'll forgive me, Reverend Sims. I have been thinking about the incredible pressure that society puts on us and that I put on myself to hold it together at all times, at work, at home, in my relationships, and I'm actively trying to find ways to let some of that pressure go. I'd like to think of myself as a recovering perfectionist, but I haven't quite gotten to the recovery stage yet. My need to hold it together runs deep. Today, I am playing with the idea of what would happen if I gave myself permission to change my expectations of myself and not strive to have it together all the time. And to be honest, just the idea brings up all kinds of emotions for me. Guilt about letting others down, fear about making a mistake, worry that I won't be accepted for my imperfect self. And yet, I think on the other side of all of that could be a life where I ask for and give more help and grace, where I create space for me and others to human together. This idea goes far beyond my individual sphere. We have been trying to hold things together as a society for so long and in so many wrong ways. By keeping it together as is, we're upholding systems and structures of oppression that were built that way by design. We are stuck in old ways of thinking about and doing things and not fully open to the possibilities. Several years ago, I read a really powerful book called Burning Down the House: The End of Juvenile Prison. The author, Nell Bernstein, argued that reforms are not working and the juvenile justice system itself needs to be dismantled. So while we do our best to hold ourselves and one another in our beautiful imperfection, I'm figuring out what I need to let go of and dismantle within myself and within our world so that it can be put back together and reshaped in a better way. That gives me a sense of hope for what could be.
Thanks, Amy. In the Beatles' Here Comes the sun rising is a metaphor for better times coming, which may not sound right to us in Phoenix during the summer or during the peak of the COVID pandemic. But this is also a song that many hospitals play over the speaker system whenever a COVID patient is taken off a ventilator, because they need the hope that it sings about. So let's share just a short version. The lyrics will be in the chat. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's all right. Little darling, the smiles return into the faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's all right. Little darling, I feel that ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun, do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's all right. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, it's all right. Thanks all.
Good morning. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of this service, and thank you to the team. It's a great team to be a part of. It's good to be back with you. It has been another difficult week of separation from our usual routines, the activities we enjoy, and each other. I am used to quite a bit of solitude, but it has been 4 months now. What I thought initially would be a temporary isolation for perhaps a couple of months looks like it will be with us for much longer. I have noticed that being as isolated as I have been has taken a toll on me, and yet I am blessed to be able to work from home, physically distant and at least relatively safe. Many are not so lucky. All of us need to be concerned about them. When I go to the grocery store, there are people there to help me and others get food to eat. I am extremely grateful to them. I have taken to telling them so. And I think of others who are at risk of infection, but are out there helping all of us. Many protesters, police officers, firefighters, those in the military, and many others, especially healthcare workers. The latest predictions on the spread, severity, and duration of the COVID-19 pandemic remain grim. We know the pandemic is devastating lives. What we do not know yet is how much worse it will get before it gets better. Many people have died. It is a certainty that more will. The rest of us are at risk and probably at least a little fearful. The worldwide economy has suffered dramatically, and we along with it. People are out of work, worried about how to survive economically as well as physically. In our desire to return to our usual lives, we have reopened businesses too soon and exposed ourselves to more infection and death. Dr. Fauci says it is still too early to talk about a second wave of the virus. We're still in the first one. Many of us are still isolated, as we have been. Isolation runs counter to our social nature and desire to be together. It runs counter to the interdependence we recognize and affirm in our 7th UU principle. It runs counter to what is needed for psychological health. And yet, physical isolation is what is indispensable now and for an as yet unknown time. I am concerned about the toll our physical separation is taking on all of us. More recently, I have been reminded of our increasing isolation from each other, politically and emotionally. The most recent examples of police violence against Black citizens sparked wide protests, some of which turned themselves violent. That prompted more responses from police forces, some of which included brutality and the denial of civil rights to some. We are divided from each other in so many ways, by race and ethnicity, by age, by inequality in many areas, by political party and political leanings. It is impossible to ignore that in many respects, we are living separate lives, isolated from each other. That attitudinal and emotional separation too, in addition to physical separation, makes me feel isolated, anxious, fearful, alone. Without the comma, today's sermon title, Holding It Together, says what I think we are all trying to do. Hold it together, hold our lives together, hold everything together that seems to be breaking apart. Society, our democratic institutions, the global economy, our planet, our healthcare systems, our own physical, emotional, and spiritual health, and our congregations. With the comma, this is the challenge of these days. Not just holding it together, but holding it together. Whatever it is, the disease, death, isolation, fear, anxiety, depression, economic hardship, but also hope, love, our world. Holding everything together is our best chance of holding it all together. Right now, more than usual, I've been thinking about God or the divine. So I start with the age-old cry, where is God? Where is God in this pandemic? Where is God in any trouble, hardship, or pain? For that matter, where is God in all that our life gives us? What we hold precious, as well as what we abhor. Maybe God is whatever power feels outside of ourselves, but lets us hold it together. I say that I am agnostic, but I am only agnostic if I think of God traditionally as some number of supernatural persons, as master planner, controller of the universe and our individual lives. If I think of God instead as the attributes we hope for and assign to such person or persons, as good, as love, as hope, then I see God everywhere. Then I see God in everything good, the mysterious universe we inhabit and the life we are given but did not and cannot create. I see God in the love and compassion we feel but cannot manufacture, the hope that sustains us when darkness falls. In times of trouble, I sometimes look back to the hardships those in the past have borne and overcome. Sometimes I find in their example some spark we might as well call divine that allowed them to triumph over adversity and hopelessness. Ludwig von Beethoven, the genius composer, is such an example. Beethoven did not lead a happy life, and by all accounts, he was a difficult human being to like. He was isolated all his life for many reasons. And yet, in this 250th year after his birth, he is being celebrated the world over because his music connects us perhaps more joyfully and resolutely than anyone else's. Beethoven was born on or about December 16th, 1770, in the city of Bonn in modern-day Germany. His father, Johann von Beethoven, was a mediocre court singer better known for his alcoholism than for any musical ability. But Beethoven's grandfather, godfather, and namesake, Kapellmeister Ludwig von Beethoven, was Bonn's most prominent and prosperous musician, a source of endless pride for young Beethoven. Sometime between the births of his two younger brothers, Beethoven's father began teaching Beethoven music with an extraordinary rigor and brutality that affected him for the rest of his life. Neighbors provided accounts of the small boy weeping while he played the clavier. He would stand on top of a footstool to reach the keys, his father beating him for each hesitation or mistake. On a near daily basis, Beethoven was flogged, locked in the cellar, and deprived of sleep for extra hours of practice. He studied the violin and clavier with his father, as well as taking additional lessons from organists around town. Whether in spite of or because of his father's draconian methods, Beethoven was a prodigiously talented musician from his earliest days. Beethoven, who struggled with sums and spelling his entire life, was at best an average student. Some biographers have hypothesized that he may have had mild dyslexia. By 1784, Beethoven's father's alcoholism was worsening and his voice was decaying. He was no longer able to support his family. So Beethoven, at age 14, formally requested an official appointment as assistant court organist. Despite his youth, his request was accepted, and Beethoven was put on the court payroll with a modest annual salary. Marjorie Howard says, as his father declined, Beethoven took over the role of wage earner and caretaker of the family. He also assumed his father's controlling and domineering ways. For a variety of reasons that included his crippling shyness and unfortunate physical appearance, Beethoven never married or had children. He was, however, desperately in love with a married woman named Antonie Brentano. The death of Beethoven's brother Caspar in 1815 sparked one of the great trials of his life, a painful legal struggle with his sister-in-law, Johanna, over the custody of Karl von Beethoven, his nephew and her son. The struggle stretched on for 7 years, during which both sides spewed ugly defamations at the other. In the end, Beethoven won the boy's custody, though hardly his affection. Despite his extraordinary output of beautiful music, Beethoven was lonely and frequently miserable throughout his adult life. Short-tempered, absent-minded, greedy, suspicious to the point of paranoia, Beethoven feuded with his brothers, his publishers, his housekeepers, his pupils, and his patrons. In one illustrative incident, Beethoven attempted to break a chair over the head of Prince Lichnowsky, one of his closest friends and most loyal patrons. Marjorie Howard writes that Ludwig von Beethoven was an often unpleasant and always unhappy man, notoriously unkempt, suffering from chronic diarrhea, liver disease, and depression. He lived in squalor, was once observed keeping an unemptied chamber pot under his piano. He was paranoid, certain everyone was cheating him. He failed at most relationships. And still, he wrote some of the most glorious and uplifting music in history. He was all about serving humanity. It was actual people he didn't like, says Jan Swafford, a lecturer in the English department at Tufts University, and author of the book, Beethoven, Anguish and Triumph. He was not able to respond to how others thought or viewed the world. Most people realize other people have different feelings, different ideas. He couldn't see that, says Swafford. At the same time Beethoven was composing some of his most immortal works, he was struggling to come to terms with a shocking and terrible fact, one that he tried desperately to conceal. He was going deaf. By the turn of the 19th century, when Beethoven was 30, he struggled to make out the words spoken to him in conversation. Beethoven revealed in a heart-wrenching letter in 1801 to his friend Franz Wegler, "I must confess that I lead a miserable life. For almost 2 years, I have ceased to attend any social functions, just because I find it impossible to say to people, 'I am deaf.' If I had any other profession, I might be able to cope with my infirmity, but in my profession, it is a terrible handicap." Swafford wrote that deafness led to further isolation for a man who was already depressed and had alienated his friends and relatives. At times driven to extremes of melancholy by his affliction, Beethoven described his despair in a long and poignant note that he concealed his entire life. Dated October 6th, 1802, and referred to as the Heiligenstadt Testament, it reads in part, "Oh, you men who think or say that I am malevolent, stubborn, or misanthropic, how greatly do you wrong me. You do not know the secret cause that makes me seem that way to you. I would have ended my life. It was only my art that held me back. It seemed impossible to leave the world until I had brought forth all that I felt was within me. Almost miraculously, despite his rapidly progressing deafness, Beethoven continued to compose at a furious pace. Beethoven died on March 26, 1827, at the age of 56, of post-hepatic cirrhosis of the liver. Beethoven's body of musical compositions stands with William Shakespeare's plays at the outer limits of human brilliance. And the fact Beethoven composed his most beautiful and extraordinary music while deaf, or very nearly so, is an almost superhuman feat of creative genius. Despite Beethoven's personal unhappiness, says Swafford, he put joy and consolation into his music with endless generosity. Howard's article says Jan Swafford's magisterial biography of Beethoven shows how the composer created beauty in the midst of suffering. But how? Beethoven's last full symphony was his monumental ninth, known as the Choral, because of its fourth and final movement, which includes 4 soloists and a full chorus. Beethoven took the text for the chorus from Friedrich Schiller's Ode to Joy, adding a few words of his own in the beginning. Translated from the German and using the male-centered pre-inclusive language of his time, these are some of the words the chorus sings. Oh, friends, not these sounds. Let us instead strike up more pleasing and more joyful ones. Joy, 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 beautiful spark of divinity, daughter from Elysium. All men shall become brothers. Wherever your gentle wings hover, whoever has been lucky enough to become a friend to a friend, whoever has found a beloved wife, let him join our songs of praise. Yes, and anyone who can call one soul his own on this earth. Every creature drinks in joy at nature's breast. Gladly, just as his sons hurtle through the glorious universe, so you, brothers, should run your course joyfully, like a conquering hero. Be embraced, you millions. This kiss is for the whole world. Brothers, above the canopy of stars must dwell a loving Father. How was it that Beethoven, whose own father was so cruel to him, could even imagine a loving father? How was it that he who had little joy, no wife, and few friends, nevertheless wrote glorious music in praise of what was missing in his own life? Where was God for Beethoven? Where was God in his suffering, in his deafness, the lack of love in his life, his isolation? How was it that Beethoven, in spite of all his misery, was able to maintain such a noble view of life and humanity, enough to write music like his monumental Ninth Symphony that continues to inspire millions? Maybe that is where God was for Beethoven, in his ability to maintain that high view of life and humanity in spite of his personal misery. It is easy to see the spark of divinity in the man's music, but I think that divine spark is also evident in Beethoven's continued faith in humanity and the possibility of joy. Where is God for us in this time of trouble? Maybe God is whatever mysterious power allows our spirits to rise in this time of anxiety, separation, isolation, and perhaps depression. Maybe the God we crave that can save us is our own ability to love, to find beauty in each other and in what we can create, in reaching out for mutual help and comfort. Beethoven, by himself and lonely, somehow held his unhappy life together enough to compose his inspiring music. But he helps all of us now hold it together, 2.5 centuries after he was born. American violinist and conductor Marin Alsop said, ever since Beethoven's iconic Ninth Symphony premiered May 7th, 1824 in Vienna, it has remained arguably the most popular composition in the classical music canon, thanks largely to its final movement, the Ode to Joy. But Beethoven's music has become something much more than popular. He was proposing nothing less than a philosophy for humanity. Beethoven, the composer-philosopher, was a man who suffered more than we can imagine. And yet he maintained optimism and a sense of hope that we can admire and even envy. He believed wholeheartedly in the goodness of humanity, the power of love, joy, unity, tolerance, and peace to overcome and endure. I am convinced, Alsop writes, that we inherently know and feel these aspirations when we hear Beethoven's Ninth and are drawn to it both musically and morally. Beethoven's Ninth has become synonymous with many important political and social events over the course of the last century. In 1972, the Council of Europe adopted the prelude to the Ode to Joy as the anthem of Europe to celebrate the shared values of the member states and express the ideals of a united Europe: freedom, peace, and solidarity. In 1985, European Union leaders chose it as the official anthem of the EU. Outside Europe, the Ode has been tapped as a protest anthem, from demonstrators in Chile to the more recent Occupy Wall Street gatherings in Madrid. During the 1989 Christmas holiday, Alsop's teacher and mentor, Leonard Bernstein, conducted a version of Beethoven's Ninth at the Brandenburg Gate to celebrate the fall of the Berlin Wall. Beethoven's Ninth Symphony is humanity's anthem. Alsop has created a new project called All Together, a global ode to joy, marking the 250th anniversary of Beethoven's birth in 2020. Early during their isolation due to the COVID-19 pandemic, members of the Rotterdam Philharmonic played their separate parts of Beethoven's Ode to Joy in their homes, playing the music they and millions of us love. Electronically, the Rotterdam musicians joined their parts together and added the chorus. I leave you with that recording to lift you up, because disease is not the only thing that spreads by contagion. Joy, hope, courage, and resilience are contagious too.
Hallo allemaal, ik ben Pierre Bijzer en ik speel hoorn in het Rotterdams Philharmonisch Orkest.
Mijn naam is Maria Dinjan.
Jan Jansen.
Anja van der Maat.
Juliano Sommerhalder.
Kalaet Samson.
Annelien Stukker.
Simon Wierega en ik speel trompet.
Wendy Lelyveld.
Arjen Leendert.
Pierre Volgers.
Ik ben Rosalinde en ik speel altviool.
Laurens Otto.
Josephine Lek.
Ik ben Hendrik Johannes.
Wilco Bijnema.
Pieter Neutelen.
Ik ben Saskia.
En ik ben Wim.
Wij spelen in het Rotterdams Philharmonisch Orkest.
We moeten ons aanpassen aan een nieuwe werkelijkheid.
En oplossingen vinden
om elkaar te steunen.
Creatieve krachten helpen ons hierbij.
En laten we out of the box denken.
En innovatie gebruiken.
Om het samen te doen.
En ons verbonden met elkaar te blijven voelen.
Als we het samen doen, gaat het ons lukken.
Thank you, Reverend Sims, for your sermon and for that beautiful music. Before our closing words, we'd like to invite you to coffee hour after the service. We'll be going to a different Zoom room where we'll be able to meet as a large group for a moment to say hello, and then we'll move into smaller breakout rooms for discussion. The link for the room will be in the chat. Just click on that at the end of service, and we'll also have it on our final slide. We also have a coffee hour just for our children and their families, and that'll be in the chat as well. If you're a visitor, please come in and join us. We're a friendly bunch, and it'll be great to meet you and get to know you a little bit.
I am not alone. You are not alone. We are not alone. Really, we are not, as much as it may sometimes seem to the contrary. We must hold it all together, because that is the only way we can. Together we can overcome and endure, as Alsop said. I find a divinity worth cherishing, worth worshiping in that. I see God in the triumph of the human spirit over adversity, of beauty over suffering, the triumph of human community over isolation. Let us leave this service with a sense of being together in all the important ways, even when we are physically separated.